Hi, Megan.
And actually,
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to finally have you on the podcast. I'm happy to connect with you sometime other than at COPA. Um, so let's start off with this. I usually let my guests do their own introduction. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your business, and about how you came to be in the business that you are in?
okay, so my name is Megan Pinchback. I am the owner of Dyslexia on Demand. First and foremost, I am a certified academic language therapist. So the acronym is CALT. Um, it's the highest level trained dyslexia professional that you can be, basically. So, um, besides that, I have been running Dyslexia on Demand for about 5 years. We started prior to that, to COVID, and have been in private practice in the public sector for longer than I like to think about. Special education, the whole thing. I also am the co-host of a podcast called Don't Call on Me, where we basically interview people with dyslexia, parents of children with dyslexia, parent-child combos in order to really help to encapsulate the shared emotional experience and journey of people with dyslexia. And really, we also obviously try to showcase the light at the end of the tunnel. I am a mom of five, and besides that, love to cook. And my dorky thing is puzzles. So, how I got to where I am is a lot to do with recognizing I always call them dyslexia resource deserts that are out there. You can
Yeah.
be pockets of the country where it is not hard to access a highly qualified dyslexia professional, but honestly, it's usually the opposite, where it's hard to find them. If they do exist in your area, they have no openings. You're having to commute long distances and that kind of thing. So I do live in the Austin, Texas area where it is much easier to access a CAL. But that being said, I live pretty rurally. So kids in my school district, it's like improbable to think that their parents are going to have the time 4 times a week to drive, you know, 45 minutes to where my private practice used to be, wait for an hour drive home. So actually, prior to COVID, I had the idea of why not try this in a virtual setting over Zoom. Back when I was in graduate school, literally in, you know, the 99, 2000, I was doing distance learning for graduate school. So, why is this not a thing in, education? So, I converted my whole practice into this Zoom based environment and really worked hard on making sure that I was ensuring what we call fidelity, meaning that we're following all the research based practices. It's still multisensory, it's all those things. I have had a bunch of private practice clients. I transitioned them into this Zoom environment because I already had the parents' trust. So they were willing to go with me, right? But I needed to kind of experiment and see, does the data align if I'm doing it in this modality? And it did. And then COVID hit. So at that time, of course, I'd been advertising that I am doing it this way. And a lot of the other CALT kind of found out or were like, wait a second, I need to jump on this train too.
Yeah.
The whole world is shut down and you know how to do this. So it's kind of funny, the kismet that happens in the world. And fast forward 5 years, we've serviced over 600 kids. We usually have a roster of about 200 kids. We have 85 CALTs who work here doing one-on-one intervention with kids over Zoom, literally around the world. And we also have a small office staff, and we are all CALTs. We are all certified academic language therapists. So every decision that we make related to the business is all in the child's best interest. So not only do you have your CALT, but you also have a team who's watching your children's data. We have diagnosticians who are doing baseline, annual, exit testing. We're kind of all in this together, making sure that we're doing best by the children. And we really try to support the families extensively by pushing out tons of free education and training and emotional support opportunities and on and on and on and on. So it's a business, but it's a passion project and it keeps me really busy. Besides that, I'm just like chauffeuring children to every sport in the face of the planet.
Many children
Yes.
too. Many children. I love that answer because it is so comprehensive. I love to interview people that have podcasts because to just like take the question and run, and I do love that. But I think, there are answers that people give, whether it's where are you going to college or what do you do professionally? And there are answers that make people's eyebrows go, "Oh, oh." And whenever I tell clients or people about your business, I always make sure to mention that you're a CALT. And I've also heard people pronounce it CALT, but the acronym is CAL.
Big butt.
Yes, right. Okay. Um, and that's an answer that makes people's eyebrows raise. So I think that's where I'd like to start is what's the difference between a dyslexia therapist or tutor or somebody that can call themselves trained or even certified to provide services to a person that has dyslexia or struggles with reading, as opposed to the rigorous training and experience that you all have at your business?
So glad that you asked me this. Basically throwing me a great softball. But, the reason that I love this question is because there are so many certified levels of dyslexia interventionists out there, but very little information. And I think that when teachers, administrators, etc., hear that they have a certified dyslexia teacher working with the child, they're immediately like, oh, great. The problem is that could mean a variety of things. Literally certified in some program that the state is pushing out, where it's a maybe 4-day training, and I'm talking about half days, right? And that is the dyslexia teacher. It could mean that you are classroom level certified, which might mean like 30 days. It could mean just a whole host of things, all the way up to the rigor that a CALT goes through. So a CALT is a master's level programming plus 2 additional years of classroom hours in the dyslexic brain and structured literacy and multisensory therapeutic techniques. You amass 700 clinical hours before you sit for your national board certification. And after you do that, you get these cool letters behind your name, which you very much earn. And then, of course, we have ongoing CEUs, a professional organization, the whole nine. So there are other people who go through something similar, but not equivalent. I would say your next group are going to be Orton Gillingham Academy related. So OGA, therapy level, they even have fellows, right? There's other people out there who have this, but I think that the benefit personally of working with the CALT has a lot to do with the fact that you're also getting a therapeutic level, very research-based programming that they're following. Whereas your OGA people over there, they're doing more freestyle. They're writing their own lesson. Now that can be good and bad, and that's a whole nother Zoom probably. That's a whole presentation. But what's important when you're looking for somebody out there, I think that, of course, you always want the gold standard. Why wouldn't you? But that being said, it does not mean that somebody who is lesser qualified can't be impactful for your child. Where it gets muddy is when we have a child with dyslexia who has just a different profile, right? Which is very, very typical. So, dyslexia varies in severity levels. Also, when we're looking at the areas of weakness within dyslexia, some can be more pronounced and others are a little bit stronger. We have comorbid conditions, lots of what I call dyslexia sisters that hang out with neurodivergence, right? So
Yeah.
it is more often than not that there is a multiple diagnosis situation. And then all that being said, we also have to look at how the brain processes any information it gets, right? And there's going to be variability in there too. And I'm not talking about intelligence level, although I can be talking about intelligence level. I'm
Mhm.
just talking about just kind of the nuances and things that we have to understand about a learner as to how their brain processes the information. So, somebody who is a CALT is going to understand how to read a test like a comprehensive neuropsych and FIE, understand that child's profile and specifically what that child needs in terms of delivery style, depth, repetition, like depth of exposure, that kind of stuff to really make it work. Whereas if we had somebody classroom level trained, Barton trained, and PS, you can be trained by Susan Barton, but most people are not. It's an 8-hour training. And then they're hanging their shingle. So those people know how to go through a curriculum. But when that curriculum isn't being effective, when the kid's flatlining, when the kid isn't making progress, they don't know how to troubleshoot. And so, there's program level certifications, there's all kinds of different certifications in dyslexia. It's important you understand what the differences are that are out there. And I'm not saying that, it has to be a CALT or it's not effective. That is not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that when you have a child who has a more complex profile, you know that you're getting the good stuff when you're going there versus kind of rolling the dice sometimes,
And I think that's the value. I think so, like, I'm really happy that you talked about the certification and the rigor of this certification process and the education, as well as the experience. But I'm really happy that you ended with the ability to modify and to dig deeper, because when I send a client out for an IEE or even an initial evaluation, I usually wanna go someplace where somebody says, like you said about your puzzles, I wanna go to somebody that's gonna geek out and say, "Oh, wait, these 2 scores don't jive with one another," or, "This particular score makes me wanna dive deeper." And then we'll run an additional test or a subtest, or we'll, um, talk to somebody else, or we'll dive deeper in whatever that piece of their educational or intellectual or functional functioning tells us.
yes.
And I think the same thing is true when I refer out to tutors. I want somebody that isn't just going to go from lesson 1.1 to 1.2 to 1.3, but is going to know what to do if the child is assessed at the end of lesson 1.1 and they're only reaching 60% accuracy, or, has a gut feeling on how their fluency is or what their automaticity is on a particular skill, and can break it down and then can modify or spiral or dive a little deeper. So, I mean, I think that's the thing. I guess my question for you, like a resource that we can give to parents, is if your child isn't making progress, what are some questions you can ask your tutor, therapist, provider? And how can you know that they're skilled enough to do the next right thing?
So first off, I always say, obviously, you got to look at or ask more questions in terms of, you've been a tutor for 20 years. You worked in the classroom in theory, right? It seems like you should be a great person, but also understanding more about the kiddos the training level of the person who's doing it, and not just, because there's also like, how closely are they monitoring data? I would say that would probably be one of the best questions to ask. Like, how often are you collecting that data? Because kids with dyslexia, we can't just go in and do like one presentation of something and check the box and move on. What we have to really do is continue, like you were saying, spiral back, like an interweave all of this stuff. Because ultimately, what we're doing is we are working to create a new neural network in a child's brain, right? So when we do that, we have to get this new learning down this thing called the instructional hierarchy. And so that means that the brain has had enough exposures to get to the point that it has been generalized and adapted, and it's happening behind the scenes in a child's brain, right? And so if we only go this far, we're going to see a gain for a little bit, and then we're going to regress because that new information didn't have enough exposures to get all the way down. And every child is going to need a different number of exposures, and this is based on the brain. So that's kind of where I think data really, really comes into play significantly, is, being able to collect that and see that. And I use a system. I think that it's really important to use a system of checks and balances, because most all data, let's be real, that's collected in the schools everywhere is all informal data. And there's area of subjectivity and all that kind of stuff, right? But what is black and white? Well, it's norm reference testing, it's formal testing. So if we're using a combination of formal testing and informal testing as a system of checks and balances, like, oh, that child showed mastery, but then 9 months later, that child's brain isn't generalizing the concept. Oh, we've got to go back and fix it, right? So yeah, that is what I would say. So I think that is a lot based in how well is this person trained? How intensively is this person trained? And it doesn't mean that the tutor isn't effective for a lot of kiddos. It's just that they don't have a deep enough bag of tricks, and they don't understand how to use data well enough.
Yes.
To be able to adapt it and individualize it to the child's needs.
Yeah. And then can we talk too about how experience comes into that? Because I've said this on the podcast before, but probably not recently enough that people remember. So my own son that has Down syndrome, I knew that if I taught him reading, I could sense, like my gut was telling me that if we really hit reading, that his motor planning as it applied to language was going to improve. So he was going to get more articles, and he was going to get the entire prepositional phrase if he started reading those things.
Mm-hmm.
And people that I thought that a Lindemood Bell program. Oh, did I freeze?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
But
Did it catch up?
Bell.
Okay. So at first, we probably don't edit that out. Our motto around here, Megan, is perfectly imperfect.
That's right. That's
yes.
what I am.
That's how we all are. I don't want people to think, that they can't live up to the standard of my messy car and my funky internet.
100%.
So, okay. So Jack, I had talked to enough people and done enough research that I really was like, I'm going to hang my hat on Lindemood Bell lips. And so I bought it. I got trained. It was going to cost me $15,000 to have somebody work with him in the summer. And when I took him to get assessed there, I was like, they don't know how to, first of all, let the record be shown. Let the record show. I'm a bad lawyer. Let the record show that Megan's jaw is on the ground. This is a CALT.
It is. Look, I know what Lindemood Bell costs in general, but then I think that when I'm reminded of it, what you guys pay for it, it's insane. We work a lot in California. I'm blown away with just general rates in California.
Yes.
Anything else, but keep going. Sorry.
Yes. So no, I think that's important, right? So it's going to cost me $15,000, and I just, thank goodness, before I paid that, I said, will you just assess him quickly, and then we'll pull that money out. And they couldn't assess him. They didn't know how to work with him. And Jack is spicy. He's hilarious. And so, especially before the pandemic, now he's grouchy, but that's an aside. So I said, wait a minute, I can spend like $1,500 or $1,000 and get trained myself. I work with them almost every day anyway. I'll just get trained. Well, I did. And here's where the experience comes in. Lips in particular involves a lot of interoception and like body awareness. Jackie has close to zero body awareness still at the age of 14. I know that if I had done lips with, 30 kids, I could have modified it for Jack. But for my first student, I couldn't modify it, even though I know that student as intimately as you could possibly know anybody, is his mom. So the experience, I want for you to talk about experience and like kind of just that gut, like intuitive, this is what we need to do because you've done it with so many kids in the past. I think experience matters too, right?
Experience matters a ton. Like, hence, we have to get 700 clinical hours.
Yes.
Trials. And you're going to execute something on one child and they're going to take it like boom. And you're like, I'm amazing. And then you're going to do the same thing with another kid and nothing.
Yeah.
And you have to know what to do now. And so that is why I think experience definitely comes into play. Exposures to different profiles and things that, personality even, all those pieces. But that's the bag of tricks that I was mentioning before, is that when this one area, right, isn't really, everything else is sticking, but this one area, I need more exposures and opportunities. And you're working through one curriculum and you've run out and maybe you've done it 3 times already and the kid wants to hang himself,
Yeah.
You need to have other places that we go to pull in stuff and experience to know when that's the right fit for that kiddo. So,
Yeah.
100%. And that's what we're all about here, I will say, is that, yes, do we use one evidence-based therapeutic curriculum at the base? Yeah, but that is intended to be delivered through a therapist's eye with adaptations made. And then very, very often we have to further adapt that curriculum and bring in other stuff that's right for that kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a son right now who is going through therapy, and it is taking an entire week to do one lesson, and that's fine. So I'm saying 4 different sittings because that therapist is needing to bring in a bunch of other supplemental areas. And also we have to engage him because he's got ADHD and his medicine is worn off at that point. And we have to make it a little bit more kinesthetic for him. And, just I think knowing when to do those things, knowing when you need to pump the brakes a little bit, when you need to, give the gas, when we need to take a different side exit off the interstate for a little bit. That all comes with experience.
Yeah,
So
it does. Yeah.
I think that that's really important. And just like a little thing, and I am not here trying to give shade to Linda Mubal in any way, because they have some amazing programming. Lips is integrated into the Take Flight program. That is a piece that's very helpful for so many different reasons. But again, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
Visualizing and verbalizing is amazing. We use that here, all these things. But what I think it's important to parents to know is that they are taking individuals, I won't say off the street, because I'm not sure, I don't do hiring over at Linda Mubal, but it's like a lot of college kids that they train how to do a program only. And it is a different kiddo. Or when I say kiddo, I mean like the individual, the instructor.
Yeah.
Every time. So,
Yeah.
That in itself has breakdowns and problems. And so I know the hefty price tag that parents are paying. And that's my worry a lot of times. And
that's my worry. And that's my experience with clients as well. And that's why I wanted for you to address it. Because I have this conversation with clients a lot that, okay, great, you're in book whatever of whatever program, but how do we know to move on, and how are we reassessing skills? Because in reading, skills don't always build on each other. It's not like math where, once you get a foundation in one area of arithmetic, you're going to use that in another skill. In reading, you got to go back and revisit it so that it stays solid. I want to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot, but I think you'll probably know these two statistics. There's the one about, for a neurotypical brain or a non-dyslexic brain, you have to be exposed to a phoneme-grapheme combination 4 times?
It's different for every kid, but
Yes.
yes, average about 4 times for the brain to take over. So, and I'll just go ahead and finish this whole speech.
Yes, I know. You're so good at it. Do it. You guys, Megan, before you start, Megan, okay, so at the COPA conference, which I rave about, this year it's in Irvine, California, in about a month. So Megan did a pre-conference. I prefer the pre-conferences because I'm a deep dive girl. And I've gone to so many that it's hard to find one that's good. So last year I went to Megan's pre-conference, which is a whole day with Daphne Corder, my friend, who, she's in my phone as Daphne Dyslexia. Her name is not Daphne Corder in my phone.
Well, then that she is. That is her brand.
That is her entire brain. So it was like the best learning 8 hours of my life. And the PowerPoint slides were so big that Megan couldn't get them to us. She kept saying it, they're in the app. And we're all like, we can't get them. And I hung with it, even though that's not my personality, because I wanted those slides so badly. So Megan knows her stuff and she talks about this so eloquently. So, okay, Megan, do the ditty.
So I think it's important to understand, right? Like when we're looking, dyslexia is a language processing disorder. Okay. So we need to go back to the language continuum. It all happens in the same area of the brain: listening, speaking, reading, then writing. The first part, listening, speaking, we don't need any direct instruction on, right? If we did, well, anyway, reading, writing, yes, you need that instruction, but it actually, now look, 60% of kids do need it very explicitly black and white taught. We've got tons of research on that, especially our kids with dyslexia. But at the end of the day, when kids have appropriate, I guess, let's say, exposures to it, we're talking like the average number they need is 4 exposures. So that's it. And then their brain can start doing it behind the scenes. And all of that is one piece of phonological processing, which is where the deficit area is in dyslexia. Now, for kids with dyslexia, we are talking on average 500 exposures. And that's on average because that is different for every child, right? We have to look in at severity and cognitive profile. That part is really important too. So every kiddo needs it a different number of times. And ultimately, so if we want to do that thing where I said we're creating the new neural pathway, we're moving it down the instructional hierarchy, we need continual data collection. So we have a quick feedback loop to know, are we moving forward? Are we flatlining? How many more exposures do we need? So that's what I think a lot. That's why I'll say the Take Flight program, which is what we use at the core, why I like it so much. And I can still say, yeah, it's a therapeutic level curriculum that we adapt. We do. But I know that we are getting the base number of exposures needed because I have that system of checks and balances, right? Now, most likely I'm working over it because lots of kids, when they come to us, need that individualization, et cetera, et cetera. So, but at least I have that. So I'm not forgetting. And that's where I always say, and I think that OGA people who are therapist fellow, they do amazing work. They have a lot of training, but like they're writing their own lessons. Have we gone back enough time? Have we counted? Do we know that piece? And I don't have to do that as a therapist because I know I'm following something that, a dyslexia hospital created. So, at least I have a little bit more flexibility and comfort, I guess, ease that from there, if I'm just working my magic to that curriculum, then it's going to be amazing.
It's so important. And that 4 versus 500 just blows people away when they the first time.
Yeah.
The
You're freezing. I'm going to turn my video off.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. It's just less to push through the bandwidth, and I think it might even be raining at my house, so it's also me probably.
That's okay. We're almost finished, and I think we're doing great.
I think we're doing great too, Ashley.
Okay. So my like editing thing will cut out that thing. And so, but I usually go like this so that Rachel, my person, knows that like that way she can just scan and like find me with my arms out. Okay.
Oh, that's such a good idea. Do you know that like we have an editor and we always say, see, cut that. But I
Right.
yeah. I'm like,
I know, but then it's like, then you got to go back and watch it. And so if I just put my arms out, then she can listen to this and then
yeah.
cut it. Okay. Thanks, Rach. Okay. So Megan, that was beautiful. My next question is, and I hope you have the statistic memorized. And if you don't, maybe you can just talk about it. So there's that statistic about, I think there's 40 phonemes in the English language. And so if you teach people, this is like, so set this up a little bit. This is like why we use science of reading and why we teach this phoneme graphing relationship instead of using like best guess spelling and the 3 cueing method of Lucy Calkins and Fontes and Pinnell and that stuff. So do you know the statistic of if you teach 40 phonemes, then a child can read this many words versus teaching like whole word reading? Do you remember that one?
Wow. I have it. Actually, I have it in my presentation, but I'm sure I could pull it out.
No, it's okay.
It's an amazing difference, right? If you teach there's 44 phonemes in the English language. And a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound, right? With graphemes being the written representation. And I haven't accessed, I was like, there's a ton of those, right? And it's like, we're considering blends, graphemes, et cetera, right? So that's where there's some variabilities in there. But anywho, if you teach it, it's like if you teach, and I'm dying to pull it up now, and I like really want to, but if you teach those things, right, with like 3 letters, if you teach it with 4 letters, I mean, if they're trying to decode a word with 3 letters, 4 letters, or 5 letters on its own, I think that it's like 5,500 different words that the kid can decode on their own, which that doesn't even, I mean, and I'm just talking about like the most basic letter combination presentations, meaning like between 3 and 5 letter words. I'm sure 2 letter words too, right?
Yeah.
Probably a lot of English accent that are all like irregular. But anyway, so but if you teach a child to memorize 5 words, they have 5 words. So it's that same exact concept. But yes, I mean, a child is going to be so much better equipped when they know the code of reading. And P.S., there is like a code to the English language. It is not as irregular as everyone likes to pretend that it is. Yes, there are irregularities, 100%, but 80% of the English language is code-based.
Only 80%? I felt like, so I took IMSE eventually, and that is what has helped me to help Jack to have multisensory, regular, structured, systematic instruction. And I felt like after taking MZ, because I was a German teacher, I was not a classroom elementary school teacher. So I had never really taught somebody to read. I felt like it was more than 80%. I was like, oh, there is a rule for that. Who knew?
Well, I will tell you this. I just ChatGPT'd it to like check myself. I'm sorry, it's 85%. 85% is rule-based and follows predictable pattern. But just really quickly, with what you're saying about what you learned, let me tell you, when I was training to be a CALT, first of all, I had already been a special educator for like 10 years, teacher of the year, gen ed teacher, all these things. I was great at what I did.
Yeah. No
And
surprise.
I became, I started my training to become a CALT. And I learned structured literacy because PS, teachers in teacher college are not trained on how to teach a child to read, structured literacy, etc. Yes. Are we pushing legislation through now to make some of those changes and higher end? We are so far from the finish line. But I didn't know any of this stuff. And I was like blown away that there was a code. There was a way I could teach kids to read in this systematic and explicit way. And I had, I was a special ed teacher at the time. So I was teaching resource. And resource is something, it's called different things in different places, but it's basically all my kiddos with learning disabilities and then kids with dyslexia. Now, probably everyone in my class or in my caseload, let's say, did have dyslexia minus like maybe one. And I was in a smaller school, so I tended to have the same kids every year. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can.
Ah,
So,
where
so you were, so
you froze again. Actually, maybe turn off your camera.
we can try. Why don't we do that?
A lot of times it helps. I live on Zoom all day long. So
Okay.
okay. So what part was I at? And put your arms out.
Woo, put my arms out. So, okay. So you were saying that you were a resource teacher and that kind of spent like all day teaching people to read.
Yes. And so I was saying that, like really what I came to realize is that my kids on my caseload, and I had them multiple years because it was a smaller school. So we tended to have the same kids every year. But I had been working with these kids for like several years and not moving the needle with them and was, I was upset because I didn't understand where's my breakdown. What am I not doing well enough? And I'm like total type A. So, I'm looking for how to fix it. And like once I learned about dyslexia, how the dyslexic brain learns, and I learned all of this stuff to be able to expose my kids to, all of a sudden I started moving the needle with all of them. And so I think also, a ton of them were undiagnosed dyslexic kids.
Yeah.
That's still a thing. Very much so in 2025, sadly. But what I learned is that it made everyone dyslexic, not dyslexic, learn to read correctly. And everyone started showing growth. And so that's my big platform too is, we have a gap in reading. I don't care what you call it. Do we want to call it a learning disability? We want to call them a slow learner? Do we want to call them dyslexia? I don't care. But when you present things in a structured literacy, evidence-based learning, especially in a multisensory way, we are going to move the needle for every child.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's ultimately the goal. And that's why it works. So let's finish up. I feel like you and I could and oftentimes do talk forever. And I feel like this has been so valuable. So you are at the beginning of a series where we're interviewing some of the speakers for our 5th annual conference, which is coming up. Why don't you tell everybody just a little bit, a little tease for your presentation at the conference?
Of course. So I am presenting on what I call the 5 W's of dyslexia. So I'm kind of covering a little bit of everything as to where is the breakdown in all of the U.S. literacy and like school-based reading instruction? Kind of like the why do we have a problem? What can we do about it? What is dyslexia? When do you test for dyslexia? So it's a little bit of everything. It is not just your standard, this is what dyslexia is presentation, but it's a little bit more of a global perspective as to what are the fallacies of the system, and understanding a little bit about that also, in addition to, what is dyslexia, but also, about testing, about the diversity in profiles. I think all of that is really important for parents and for educators, big time, and also for advocates, so that they're asking the right questions, because everybody's at a different place in their advocacy journey, and also about learning about dyslexia.
I think that you are amazing, and
Oh,
I am so grateful that you are participating in the conference and shedding so much light on these issues for my audience. And I'm so grateful that you came to the podcast and for your friendship. I just think you're amazing.
no, I can't wait to hang out in Irvine, California. I love it.
Mm.
California. It's such a little bit different than Texas.
Yes, we've been known to do a tequila shot or two.
We have, and I'm a big fan. Big But that's when I start talking more, so watch out.
Yeah, yeah. Our tables at Copa dinners are never quiet.
No, not in any shape or form.
Oh my gosh. Megan, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a great time, Ashley.